Today we're going to be looking at the digestive system, so we'll begin by orientating ourselves, and we'll note that the digestive tract runs from here all the way down to here. The majority of the digestive tract organs lie within the abdominal cavity, which lies between the bottom of the ribs and extends down into the pelvis. We're now going to look at the organs of the digestive tract, so we'll expose them by removing the organs that overlie them in the human body and life. So we're going to get rid of the lungs, and the heart, and the liver. And now we can see how deeply the digestive tract is situated within the body. So, food starts in the mouth and goes down the esophagus. It enters the stomach from the esophagus and, after further processing in the stomach, leaves into the duodenum. From the duodenum, it follows the path of the small intestine, which is this convoluted tube here, and after further processing again, it enters the large intestine. It follows this path of the large intestine before entering the rectum and re-entering the world in the form of feces through the anus. This video looks at the contributions of the mouth and the esophagus to the digestive system. We're going to use a cross-section of a head sliced down the middle of a human body. So to orientate you, here we have the nose, the mouth, and the esophagus. Okay, so the first thing that encourages you to eat is the smell of the food, but also the presence of taste buds across the surface of the tongue. The journey of a piece of food starts in the mouth. We put the food into our mouths and begin to chew it, but what does this actually achieve? In fact, it does a number of things. The teeth break it down, some grind the food, others hold it, and others rip it, but collectively they work together to break down the food and increase the surface area upon which enzymes can work. There are a number of large muscles involved in chewing, which can be seen here and here. And you might be able to feel these on your cells while you're chewing. The principal enzyme acting is salivary amylase, which is produced in glands such as these. It predominantly acts on carbohydrates to break them into their constituent saccharides, such as starch, down to maltose. This has begun the process of extracting energy from your food into a usable form for the body. So the potatoes from your roast dinner are now in a simpler form of carbohydrate. The tongue assists in breaking down the food by churning it in the mouth and exposing it all to the grinding actions of the teeth and the enzymatic actions of saliva. Once the food has been moistened by saliva and partially broken down, it is rolled into a ball called a bolus by the tongue and pushed to the back of the mouth. At this point, it needs to travel down the esophagus to the stomach, and we must ensure it goes down the right way, as food in the trachea is dangerous. Therefore, we have a little flap of tissue called the epiglottis, which upon swallowing blocks off the trachea and pushes food down towards the esophagus. So now we're going to look at a different model so that we can see how the esophagus moves down to join the stomach. So once food enters the esophagus, it is pushed down towards the stomach. It travels through the esophagus by a process known as peristalsis. This involves a wave of muscular contraction pushing the food along in front of it. Interestingly, this is independent of gravity, which demonstrates the considerable strength of the muscle within the esophagus wall. The top portion of the esophagus is composed of skeletal muscle, which makes sense as we want to control our swallowing. However, after this, the bottom 2/3 are smooth muscle and under involuntary control, and so once swallowing initiates the passage of food down the esophagus, peristalsis automatically follows. Sphincters exist along the digestive tract to prevent a reflux of food into the previous part of the system. There is one such sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus as it enters the stomach. So far, your roast dinner has survived attack from crushing by the teeth, enzymes in saliva, peristalsis in the esophagus, acid in the stomach, and churning by its muscular walls. But it's only when food gets to the first part of the small intestine, called the duodenum, that its nutritional value starts to be tapped. We're now going to remove the stomach and part of the colon to allow you to see this more clearly. Numerous specific enzymes are released onto your food from the pancreas, and these break it down much further. Bile, a greenish-yellow liquid made in the liver, which would be positioned here, is mixed with your food in your small intestine and helps digestive enzymes to work better. As it travels through your small intestine, nutrients from your meal are absorbed into the bloodstream and sent to the liver, allowing you to use them as energy. We're now going to remove a large part of the small intestine to allow you to see the duodenum, which is the first part of it. So, food entering the duodenum from the stomach, known as chyme, is very acidic, having just been exposed to stomach acids. Glands in the duodenum secrete an alkaline mucus, which neutralises the stomach acid and prevents damage to the intestines. At this point, we're going to discuss the pancreas, as it is closely related to the duodenum. The pancreas has two functions: producing digestive enzymes and producing hormones. The main enzymes made are amylases, proteases, and lipases. These are secreted into a duct in the pancreas and transported to the duodenum to be released onto food chyme. Here, the amylase enzyme set to work breaking down starch to form saccharides. The lipases act on fats to produce fatty acids and glycerol, and the proteases break down proteins into amino acids. The pancreas also secretes alkaline bicarbonate into the duodenum, again helping to neutralise any stomach acid and create a more favourable environment for enzymes to work. The pancreas also makes two important hormones, insulin and glucagon. These are involved in controlling blood sugar levels following a meal containing carbohydrates. Insulin helps to lower blood glucose, while glucagon increases it. We're now going to look at the contributions of bile and the gallbladder. Bile is produced in the liver, which is situated here, and stored in the gallbladder, which is under here. It is released into the duodenum via the bile duct and has two main actions. Firstly, it contains bile salts, which emulsify fats. This involves breaking down large fat molecules into smaller fat droplets, giving a bigger surface area for lipase enzymes to act on and break fats down. Secondly, bile contains bile pigments. These are waste products and give feces a brown colour. We've now replaced the abdominal organs so that we can discuss the small intestine. This is where your main nutrient absorption happens. Amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol and saccharides are absorbed into the bloodstream and travel to the liver. To help this absorption, the small intestine is lined by millions of villi. These are finger-like projections sticking into the lumen of the intestine with even smaller microvilli. This increases the surface area for absorption to 250 metres squared, the size of a tennis court. Food takes 3 to 4 hours to travel through the small intestine, which is over 7 metres long. An indigestible food, such as fibre, remains in the small intestine and will enter the large intestine to form faeces. Now let us follow where the rest of your roast dinner goes to. From the small intestine, the food passes to the large intestine. We're now going to remove the small intestine so that you can see where this happens. In the large intestine, most of the water is absorbed from the food. The roast needs to make a long journey through the large intestine, which is 1.5 metres long. As most of the digestion was done beforehand, the waste materials are left to go through the large intestine. The first part to go through is the colon, where water and some minerals are absorbed. As the water is absorbed, the waste products get harder until they become solid and are known as faeces. The large intestine houses over 700 bacteria species which make up the gut flora. The products formed from these bacteria are absorbed and are essential for the body. Undigested polysaccharides are broken down to short-chain fatty acids by bacteria. The bicarbonate secreted in the large intestine helps to neutralise the increased acidity resulting from the formation of these fatty acids. These bacteria also produce large amounts of vitamins, especially vitamins K and B, for absorption into the blood. Vitamin K is produced by the bacteria known as E. coli and is important to help blood coagulate. There are goblet cells in the large intestine which produce a mucus layer to protect it from attacks from the communal bacteria. The appendix is a blind-ended tube connected to the cecum. To get a better view of this, we're going to remove part of the large intestine. This is where the food enters the large intestine from the small intestine, and this here is the vermiform appendix. There are two possible functions associated with the appendix, one of which is an immune function and the other is the maintenance of gut flora, but the actual function is still unknown. Some researchers believe that it was part of the digestive system from many years ago. Appendicitis is an inflammation of the appendix caused by prior infection in the intestine or an obstruction of the appendix. This then results in the appendix being filled with mucus and causing pain. The large intestine turns into the rectum. We're going to remove the large intestine to get a better view of the rectum. The rectum acts as a storage for faeces. It's under the control of a voluntary sphincter, which relaxes when we pass faeces and eventually our food completes its journey into a toilet.